Ahoy there, this is CowTipper Vern again. I wanted to make a real quick episode to clarify one thing from a previous episode. In a previous episode that I entitled Say It, I made the following comment about, well, I was talking about mental health broadly, and I made the following brief comment referring to how people viewed some mental health when I was younger. I remember professing people being very disparaging of mental health treatment when I was younger. ADHD was a big topic when I was in elementary school, and there was a general sense that it was being overblown and kids should just be kids and all this. And of course, now looking at all that stuff, I realized that was all nonsense and that I wanted to clarify what I said there. I actually had in my notes to delve into it a little bit, and of course I just read right past my notes. Didn't even consider expounding on it even though I'd intended to. And didn't notice until I was editing it later. And I actually thought about going back and editing the recording. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I'll find little things that I didn't say quite how I wanted to say, and I'll, splice in new pieces or whatever. But this time I thought, it's not that big of a deal because it doesn't take away from the broader point I was making within that episode, but there's another point that I wanted to make, so I decided to make a different episode. So that's what this is. I was a little unclear about what I was saying there, and I conflated two different things. I started by talking about 2x2s being disparaging of mental health treatment and dismissive of mental health issues, and then I said that there's a general sense that ADHD diagnoses were overblown and kids should just be kids and stuff. What I meant by that is that was a general thing. That wasn't necessarily a 2x2 thing. I said it so quickly in the episode that I didn't go back and parse out what I was saying. So on the one hand, I had a religious community that had a certain way of looking at mental health and being dismissive of it. But also on the other hand, there was a general feeling about the progress in mental health awareness too. And the 2x2s had fallen in that part of the conversation. I wasn't blaming the 2x2s for not understanding ADHD. That wasn't the point. And I don't blame 2x2s for not being mental health experts. That wasn't really the point. The point was that there was a general feeling about something, and the 2x2s were following that general feeling. 2x2s are actually more aware than they would like you to think of the world. We were always told when I was younger that 2x2s are in the world, but they're not of the world. Well, they didn't say 2x2s, of course. The idea was we are God's people, we're chosen, we're special, we're a peculiar people, so we're not of the world. And that thought that I kind of blew past in the Say It episode was intended to convey that 2x2s had their own biases, of course, but they also adopted the biases of the world around them often. And rather than go back and edit in an exploration of that idea, I thought I'd just make a new episode about that. 2x2s are in the world, but they don't want to be of the world. But they are in the world. This is really confusing for kids. I remember growing up thinking, well, I had to be in the world. I had to be an example. I had to be the only Bible someone would ever read, of course. You tell little kids that a lot to just ratchet up the anxiety in an anxious kid. But I didn't really know what that meant. It's hard to know exactly what don't be of the world means. It's hard for adults. It's definitely hard for kids. In fact, it's maybe impossible. I don't know. Being in the world but not of the world is a really complex idea. And 2x2s don't expound on that idea very much. The only way they really talk about it is in not being like the world. So you're in the world, but you can't be like them. And typically that just means be against the world, be against whatever's happening, be against whatever progress there is. Whatever the new narrative is, whatever education the world is trying to give to you, whatever the broad current of thought and morality are in the world, be against those. The world, by definition, is wrong. The world is evil. The world is sinful. So when in doubt, just go against that. So what I was trying to point out in that last episode was that while there was some skepticism about the progress of mental health diagnoses and treatment, and 2x2s had that anyway, they were already predisposed to that because of their skepticism of the world. But the skepticism manifests itself very similar to the skepticism of similar people in the world. This isn't a really complicated thought, but I wanted to make an episode on it just because I think it's something to think about for 2x2s. I have a point, and I'm going to build to it and make it at the end. There's a payoff to this point. 2x2s want to be separate, but that's as far as they think it through. They're just not of the world. I remember when I was young hearing workers talk about not being carried away by the current of the world, by the flow. Don't go with the flow. Oh, it's dangerous to go with the flow. Because it's implied that whatever the flow is, whatever the general movement of society is, you shouldn't go with that. That's not a great principle because it's sort of void of any evaluation of the flow. It doesn't analyze where the current is leading people. It just tells you not to do it. But that's impossible because there's a lot of different ideas in the world. There's been a lot of progress in mental health diagnoses and treatment, and 2x2s generally, I'm making a broad generalization here that's probably not fair, and everybody listening is going to think I'm being over general about it, and that's fine. But very broadly, 2x2s tend to not like progress in things like mental health because they like everything to be a spiritual problem. They like to talk about things on spiritual terms. I talked about that a lot in the Say It episode, so I'm not going to go into that much more. But their aversion to psychology, their aversion to therapy, their aversion to mental health diagnoses, it comes from that defiance, the defiance of progress. The reason this is an important point is because there's defiance of progress in the world too. There's always defiance of progress. There's defiance and skepticism around everything all the time. And that's normal. Every topic you have in conversation in the broader society, there will be different people with different points. And the 2x2s tend to take a more skeptical approach just because they think they're being against the world. This is what really pushed me over the edge during COVID, because I realized that rather than lean on faith and try to be careful, 2x2s seemed overly biased in favor of skepticism, of learning anything, of education and new information around COVID. They're very much against it. And that's not to say that all of the information was good. This isn't an evaluation of the information. This is just saying 2x2s tended to push back against it. And what that led them toward was conspiracy theories and all kinds of other nonsense. And that's a different topic for a different day also. But again, I'm just trying to illustrate that a general tendency towards skepticism, because they want to be skeptical of the world, they don't want to go with the flow, as it were, can lead them into some really bad places. And that's what pushed me away from them during COVID. I realized during COVID that they weren't safe people to be around. I could be safe in a lot of different places in the world because a lot of people were concerned about their health. The one place I couldn't guarantee my health was being around professing people. Maybe that wasn't the one place, but it was the one place that I frequented. Meetings were the one place I frequented that I couldn't guarantee my own safety. Or maybe guarantee is a strong word, but being around a bunch of people who are skeptical of the overarching narrative in a conversation when something that deadly is happening is a problem. It's a problem for us. It was a problem for my family and our health. So again, don't want to go down that rabbit hole anymore, but I'm just trying to show that this tendency to be in the world but not of the world, when you don't really define exactly what the world is, other than the world's ideas are not God's ideas, our ideas are fundamentally better than the world's, you create this situation where you have to offset yourself from the world. So 2x2s are different from the world, but mostly in performative ways. They dress differently, at least the women. In some places, they don't celebrate holidays, certain holidays anyway. They don't play sports. They don't watch sports in some places. They don't watch TV. 2x2s like to performatively not have a TV, but they all have one in their closet. They're all paying attention. That's the joke in the X2x2 community, is that we didn't have TVs except we had one in the closet. Or we didn't have a TV, but we had a screen. We had a monitor. It was in a closet. We pulled it out sometimes. We hoped that the workers didn't see it. I've said recently, I think the reason I never had a meeting in my home is because I had a big screen upstairs in my house that the workers went and found one time. They went looking for it and found it. True story. We'd used it for gaming and stuff. We hadn't hooked it up as a TV, but it doesn't matter. It's a screen, and screens are no. Screens are bad. The world has screens. We don't have screens. Well, we do, though. They're in the closet. They're in the back room. They're hidden. Maybe they're not TVs. We have some other thing to call them. The point isn't not to have a TV. The point is to look different than the world, to feel like we're different in some way. These little performative things that don't mean anything at all, but are couched in spiritual language so that they can say, hey, we're separate, we're different. That's the main thing. The main point is to be different. The problem is, that doesn't really mean anything. There's no value inherent in being different. Having no evaluation of a concept doesn't make you better at that concept. It just makes you defiant. Oppositional defiance, being against the predominant narrative, doesn't mean you have a better point. It's not a better evaluation of things. You can be against everything but never evaluate anything. One of the things that bothered me as I was leaving meetings is that, in my opinion, it seemed to me that 2x2s never really evaluated anything morally. They just evaluated the fact that they were different than the world. It was really important to be in the world but not of the world. They didn't want to follow the flow. They didn't want to go with the flow. They didn't want the current of the world to take them away. Being against stuff all the time, being against anything that looks like progress, isn't really a point. It's not really a principle. It's just being oppositionally defiant. Oppositional defiance isn't a virtue. You're just throwing a tantrum. Being against things all the time is just a tantrum. Being in the world but not of the world, going against the flow, not going with the flow, not flowing away with the current or whatever, that's not really a thing. That's just being a jerk. Now, why does that matter though? Why can't they just believe whatever they want? Why can't we just let this go? Here's the problem with that. Well, there's an obvious problem with that. This isn't a special point. There's nothing groundbreaking here that I'm saying today. I just wanted to put it all in one place. The point that I wanted to make is that they're not actually as separate as they think they are. It's not an extra special insight to say that being against the world means you're constantly evaluating the world so that you can be against it, but that is kind of what's happening. They're taking a look at the world and then they're doing the opposite because they don't want to be like the world. But one of the things that's really bugged me since the essay scandal has broken within the 2x2s is that they actually pay a lot of attention to the world. Anytime someone brings up the fact that they have a lot of abuse in their community, the first thing they do is compare themselves to other communities. And the funny part about this is that they're comparing themselves favorably to other religions. I've had several people tell me personally, well, yeah, there's abuse in other religions too. As if that means anything. God's one true people should be separate, should be different. If you're not going to go with the flow, then don't allow the flow to allow so much abuse. On the one hand, they're very, very special in all these performative ways. In all of these ways that funnel the thoughts of the people, that control the emotions, control the thoughts, control the information, and control the behavior of their people to make them different. But as soon as a problem arises, all of a sudden they have no responsibility in it. They've controlled every part of their group to be a certain way, but as soon as that fails, all of a sudden, hey, wait a second, we're like other groups. Like I say, nothing groundbreaking here. This is all stuff that we've probably all thought ourselves. But the one insight I wanted to add is that I've noticed lately that the few 2x2s that tried to address the SA scandal have given up. They've stopped doing it. The communications are almost void of any conversation about it now. Everyone who wanted to have those conversations has left. The SA scandal in the 2x2s is pretty bad. By some of the statistics I've seen being collected among the X2x2 community, the rate of abuse is significantly worse in the 2x2 community than it is in other religious communities that have actually been held to account legally. It's very hard to get numbers, of course, but just the numbers of people coming forward and knowing the fact that not everyone is coming forward, not everybody wants to go public with their story. The people who have come forward, those numbers are indicative of a rate of abuse that far surpasses other churches. And yet 2x2s, when presented with this, like to fall back on the fact that, hey, lots of religious communities have abuse. There's no evaluation of the fact that maybe this is caused by an insular community. There's no self-awareness here. There's no evaluation of the idea that maybe, conceptually, having an insular community that's constantly trying to push back on any progress in the world results in an insular group of people that, in an effort to not take correction or instruction from the world, ends up hiding abuse. There's a direct line here. They have a big problem, and they think it's similar to other groups. But the solutions to those problems, the actions taken by those other groups, are worldly. So somehow they have the worldly problems, but they're not willing for the solutions. That's really the only point here that I wanted to make. Sometimes we give 2x2s a pass because, hey, they're different. We know because we were raised in them. A lot of you listening to this will know from being raised in the 2x2s that it's a weird world. It feels weird. It's very protected, it's very isolated, and yet it's in the world. Well, the point I'm making here is that it's in the world. They're people. 2x2s are people too. They're in the world too. The differences between them and everybody else are mostly performative. It's mostly telling people you didn't see the latest movie. And the only point I'm making is, yeah, but you have a TV in your closet. You know what's going on out there. They do have an eye on the world. They do know what's going on. The fact that they're not treating their SA crisis with the proper tools, or the best tools we have at the moment, is a choice that they're making. They're making a choice to be against the world. They're making a choice to not treat the problem. They can, they're choosing not to. The 2x2s have access to a lot of help. The 2x2s are making a constant choice across the world right now to ignore a problem that they admit they have. That's the crazy thing. They're not talking about it much because talking about it is part of treating the problem. Getting the problem out in the open and being honest about it and forthright and authentic with it is part of the treatment. It's the first step of treatment. The first step to treating something is admitting you have the thing. The only admission that the 2x2s have given is that, hey, other people have problems too. We're just like the world. But the second any treatment is suggested or requested, they turn their back on survivors. They turn their back on victims because the treatments are of the world. They're not their own treatments. That's the point. The X2x2 community oftentimes gives 2x2s a pass, actually. I think a lot of people in the 2x2s probably think that the X community is really mean and says terrible things about them and they're evil. I mean, we see that. That's not hypothetical. We see letters to that effect. Everybody who's an X has probably been told that by a member of their family at some point. It's very common. And yet, the X2x2 community actually has gone very soft on them. They've gone very easy on the 2x2s because there's a part of us that still thinks they're special. There's a part of us that still thinks that they're in the world, but they're not really of the world. They're a little different. Maybe we should treat them a little different. Maybe we should give them a pass. Maybe we don't say we want to give them a pass, but maybe we go a little bit easy on them because, yeah, they grew up differently. They're a different culture. They're a different community. We grew up in it. We know what that's like. We know what it's like to be a little different, to be confused all the time. That's true. Those are all true. They are a little different. They don't go with the flow of the world. But they're aware of the world. Not going with the flow, when going with the flow would actually help, would actually aid people, would actually lead towards some healing, is a choice. They're choosing not to let people heal. They're standing as an impediment to solving a problem that on some level they know they have. That's the only point here. As I was talking about skepticism around mental health, it just occurred to me that the skepticism was based on the fact that they knew about mental health. They were just skeptical of the world's solutions. They knew there was some kind of a problem, but they couldn't choose the world's solution, so they had to just do something different. And they aligned themselves with people who thought just like them. That's the issue. They're not that special. They are like a lot of other churches. A lot of other churches have problems. A lot of other churches have abuse. A lot of organizations have abuse, religious and otherwise. There's a lot of abuse in the world. But they do not get a pass for being ignorant. They don't deserve that pass. They know what's out there. They have a TV in the closet. There's no excuse whatsoever for them not addressing this fully. The fact that they don't is suspicious. There are so many times I've noticed where the 2x2s are aware of the world and they align themselves with a certain style of worldly solution to problems, but they align themselves with a certain type of thinking, a certain philosophy that benefits them, that they can sort of mold to make themselves feel like they're not going with the flow, that they're not in the current of the world. They're not making this stuff up. There's a lot of skepticism around healthcare in the world. They will fall for all of it. 2x2s will fall for all of it. There's a lot of skepticism of worldly expertise. 2x2s will fall for all of that because they want to be against the world. There's a lot of different currents in the world. There's a lot of different flows to flow with. But there is a moral arc to the world too. Maybe a few hundred years ago, we wouldn't have the same morals as we have now. In fact, I know that we wouldn't. And it's really hard to index how the 2x2s would have thought about that, where they would be in that historical context, because they're not that old. They're only a little over 100 years old. So it's very hard to tell what a 2x2 would have thought when 2x2s didn't exist. But now they'll align themselves with whatever worldly philosophy or train of thought, or flow, if you will, that shows the most skepticism, that shows the most skepticism of progress, of education. They can admit abuse on some level. They can't quite admit the full extent of the abuse because that shows a lot of guilt. They don't want to admit to that, of course. But they can admit that it is a problem, and they're very aware that other people have this problem too. But they don't want the other people's solutions because they don't want to be touched by the world. I'm sure 2x2s think that the X2x2 community is working against them all the time. I would say that the X2x2 community hasn't been hard enough on 2x2s. 2x2s should not be given the benefit of the doubt on this. There's a reason that I ended the Say It episode by saying I will not talk about their language. I will not talk in their language. I won't acquiesce to how they talk about things anymore. And this is why. Because I know that they actually do know better. They have a TV in the closet. They're just trying not to admit it. They do know. The understanding of mental health issues is growing all the time. They're against it. They don't want to deal with it because it's an indictment on them and their lack of desire to go with the flow. If the world makes progress, they don't want that progress. By definition, it doesn't matter whether the progress is good or bad. The world has good progress sometimes, it has bad progress sometimes. We need to evaluate that. Any belief system, religion, moral philosophy, whatever, has to evaluate those things as you go. It's much easier, especially when the only growth you have in your group is little kids, it's much easier to simplify it down into be in the world, but don't be of the world. But the problem with that is it leads you to allowing abuse, but never treating it. Never treating the problems that you created yourself. That's all I had to say about that. I just wanted to put that on an episode. There's nothing new here. This isn't groundbreaking. I just wanted to put it down because recently someone said to us that they noticed that we often talk about the 2x2s as if they're a different type of person. Like, we still believe that there's the 2x2s and the world. We hold them to a little bit of a different standard. We give them a little bit of grace. When we talk about abuse, we talk about how, well, the 2x2s need to be treated this way so that they can address it. I'm here to say that they don't anymore. We don't need to talk about them kindly anymore. It's an abusive organization that needs to acknowledge its abuse. And it probably won't, but that's why I don't think they deserve any more respect than that. That's all. That's the only point here. They have some agency. A while ago, I had another episode that said that, I think I called the episode Letter to the Shareholders, something like that. You'll find it earlier on my channel. In that episode, I said that if I ever had a conversation with the 2x2, I would need 3 points to be agreed upon ahead of time. I would need an agreement on the validity of 3 concepts. And one of those is that 2x2s need to understand that they have some agency. And this is that. And I recorded that episode quite a while ago, and I've seen some communications within the 2x2s recently that shows that they don't believe that still. They don't think they have agency. They're just going to pray and let God handle it. And that's it. And that's wrong. And I guess the point of this, what is the point of this episode? I'm not even sure what the point is. The point, I guess, is just keep talking, exes. Carry on. I guess this is just part 2 of the Say It episode. Carry on. The 2x2s can do better, but they won't. And that's why I won't talk in their language. That's all.